Excuse me. I started out with a cough, so I wanted to. Maybe that should be like my opening. You know, that's going to be my signature podcasting opening, a nasty cough. So, wanted to do a video. There's a couple things I've been thinking about. So this is kind of going to be a round robin. We're going to get to talking about this guy right here, also known as a real world leader and a real man. I'm just being kind of like facetious there. I know it pisses people off because people have been so taken by the propaganda. He's just another world leader, but I'll tell you what, as far as leaders go, he looks to me to be better than anything we got in the United States right now, at least at the top echelon of things. But we're going to get to him in a minute. The first thing is I wanted to get to was this idiot right here. Let's go to one of my favorite idiots, one of my most hated Twitter. Hate is a strong word. Just an idiot who knows nothing. Mr. Kyle Kulinsky, one of the co-founders of the Justice Democrats, which gave us AOC and the other race-baiting hypocrite grifters in the squad, who I might add, who always seem to talk a big game on Twitter, but when Nancy Pelosi needs them to vote for a corporate bailout or some other neoliberal proposal, they're always there to do it. And then you know, let's not forget the whole force the vote thing, which Jimmy Dore really got on their case about. They have leverage and they haven't used it yet. And that's because they're grifters. And you can thank this man to some extent for those people getting into Congress. So you can't trust anything he says. But here we have secular talk Kyle Kulinsky, who knows nothing about economics whatsoever, saying this right here, change in inflation by country, 2019 to 2021. This right here, Brazil and Turkey having higher inflation than the United States, proves that the inflation is not caused by government spending. Okay, so he has no idea what inflation actually is and what exactly causes it. Inflation is just a function of supply and demand. Money, currency, is just a means of exchange. And fiat currency, since it has no intrinsic value, okay, it can actually be worth anything. It can be worth $1 to $1 to 1 ounce of gold, or it can be worth $1 million to 1 ounce of gold. And that just depends on the amount of goods and services in the system versus the amount of currency units in the system. So, imagine you have 3 people, each has $1, and there's 3 muffins on the table. Let's just say that those 3 muffins, represent everything that those 3 people want. And each person wants 1 muffin. So each person has $3, and let's say I'm the seller. I am the entire economy. So I have these 3 muffins on the table. I have 3 prospective buyers. Each has $3. Each one wants 1 muffin. Once they get that 1 muffin, they're good for now. Just consider that the totality of the goods and services that one person will consume, an average consumer. So each of those 3 people are going to take that $1 and give it to me, the seller, And they're going to take that one muffin. And I'm going to have $3. Now let's change this a bit. Let's say each person has $2, but they still each want one muffin. I have the 3 muffins on the desk. They all have $2 apiece. The one's going to try to give me $1. I'm going to say, no, you have $2. Give me $2. They're each going to give me $2 for the muffin. Okay? If we can just simplify everything to an abstract microcosm, the muffins being the goods and services wanted or demanded, and the money being money, and the 3 people being consumers at large. That's inflation in a nutshell. If you have, so the more goods and services you have in an economy, okay, the more supply you have. Demand, if demand stays the same, the cost of those goods and services is going to go down. A productive economy that is healthy, that's growing, actually should experience deflation. That's something you're never going to hear in conventional wisdom in our media. But if there's less goods and services, let's say production goes down, industrial production goes down, economy slows down, there are less goods and services in the economy, but there's still the same amount of currency units. People are going to pay more for those goods and services that are available. Imagine if there's less goods and services in the economy and significantly more currency units in the economy. You can see how that can get out of really quick. That can go that situation could go sideways really fast. So, what's happened in the United States is essentially the same thing that's happened in Brazil. I'm going to show Brazil, since Kyle Kulinsky here seems to think that this proves. We're just going to focus on Brazil. Turkey is number 2. Turkey's had different sorts of problems for years. Their inflation issues are kind of long-standing, a slightly different dynamic. But Brazil and the United States have exactly the same issue. So we're going to use Brazil as an example. So, let me see if I can put this on here, right? Can't I put this tab? I'm going to take this tab. I want to put it, yes, we want to be able to see things. Okay, Brazil industrial production fell for 5th month in October. So, industrial production in Brazil and in the United States, and also in China, which is going to relate to everything, has fallen, really starting with the COVID restrictions, the continued push by a certain sector of the debate to make a big deal out of COVID. It's disrupting industrial production. It's causing our economy and Brazil's economy. Let's just put Brazil into this for now, leave the United States, because the United States has one added caveat, which is China, because we have to think of China as our sort of industrial colony. But the basic premise is the same. Industrial production has gone down. There are less goods and services, not only in the Brazilian economy and the United States economy, but really worldwide to some extent. So you have less goods and services in the Brazilian economy. Output dropped 6% in October, 14% from a year earlier. Okay. Production of durable goods declined 1.9%, 20%. I don't know if that's since the beginning of the year over year. That's a significant drop in industrial production. You know, what I see going on in Brazil is kind of similar to what happened in the United States last year. You have an election coming up. You have this Bolsonaro guy, which is the media does works very hard to make him seem like Trump, and he seems a little Trumpy. And I think Steve Bannon worked with him a little bit. You have a left wing, but Lula is very left wing. She went to jail. There's all sorts of stuff. You know, if you want to find out more about what happened to Lula, I would say go to Glenn Greenwald for the lefty point of view. And I don't know about the righty. I don't care really what happened. For all I care, you know, they can have a fucking raging communist in Brazil. You know, Latin America has this tendency. They've had this sort of lefty, left-wing sort of movement simmering underneath everything for decades. You know, that's kind of what Operation Condor was about. You know, that's why my dad went to places like Peru and fucked around with the Shining Path. But that's neither here nor there. So I see it that they're making a big deal about this COVID. They're using it to disrupt the economy. That's going to lower Bolsonaro's popularity. Same thing happened to Trump last year. Those lockdowns, I can understand at first the lockdowns being maybe an idea that maybe I would make in that position. But they kept those lockdowns going for some time. My opinion is they did want to disrupt the economy. You know, you had Moody's early last year before the pandemic really got going, and they were saying that there was no chance Trump would lose because the economy was doing so good. What better way to take that factor out of the equation than to ruin the economy with lockdowns? I mean, it sounds really nefarious and conspiratorial, but I'm not. Look, you had Podesta, doing his war games back last year. And he was talking about all of this. We're going to encourage riots. You know, they use the media to encourage the riots. BLM and all them were funded by, people sympathetic to the Democrats. Whatever. I don't really care because I wasn't really a Trump fan. I think it's great that Biden's in power. I've said that before. You know, because it brings about the collapse of the federal government that much quicker. So I could care less. As a matter of fact, this inflation is a necessary evil that we're going to have to go through in order to get back to decentralization. But I see the same thing happening in Brazil. They're kind of using the same tactics. Okay, the left is using the same tactics that the left used here. And Bolsonaro, I think his popularity is pretty much plummeted. So it worked over there just like it worked over here, using COVID, telling the people that it's Bolsonaro's fault that, you know, COVID was raging and this is Bolsonaro's fault. You know, that was their tactic last year too. Oh, Trump didn't handle COVID correctly. So that's kind of the reason why in the United States, one of the reasons besides Afghanistan and inflation, that Biden's popularity has sunk so deep because people somehow, some way, Americans who are apparently drooling idiots actually thought that Biden would be able to stop an airborne, highly infectious coronavirus and make it go away. You know, so now people are a little disappointed with him. So I see the same thing happening over there. So back to what I was talking about. So we have the production plummeting severely. And I'm going to try and stay on track from here on out because I got a few things to talk about. And here we have, where do we have it? Brazil, M1 money supply, which maybe M1 is not as good as M2, but it still gives us an idea. We can see starting in COVID, just like the United States, the money supply jumps up dramatically, probably not as much as the United States, but still a lot, especially compared to the overall size of the economy. So you have more currency units, you have less goods and services available to the public, not only because Brazil is producing less, but a lot of countries that Brazil trades with are producing less. That is the root cause of inflation. Supply. The supply is the goods and services. The demand, the money supply. Higher demand, higher money supply, lower amounts of goods. It's simple, Kyle. It's simple. You see, this is why I'm very pessimistic, because we have so many people who slobber all over what people like Kyle Kulinsky say, not to mention his fucking progeny of the squad and all them. They have no clue. It seems most Americans. This is why this country is fucked, because most Americans have no clue. First of all, how their own government works. That's how Biden was able to convince so many people last year that he's going to eradicate COVID. The president of the United States is going to eradicate COVID. Or even better, I'm going to unify the country. So that's related to history. Anybody who understands history and what's going on right now understands that there was no way Biden was going to unify or even intended to unify the United States. He's got a base because the United States is so disunified. Because people were willing to vote for anybody who wasn't Trump. And like I said, I'm fine with Trump being gone, and I don't really want him to come back. I'll be quite honest. I don't think he's going to be able to fix shit either. All the idiot fucking Trump supporters slobbering all over Trump. Last year, first of all, Trump tacitly agreed with the lockdowns. He should have fought that from the beginning, but he was afraid of what the media would say. He, despite being so adversarial to the media, he wanted so badly for the media to like him, and he should have known that it was never going to happen. So he did that. He was a big spender throughout his presidency, but especially last year. The stimulus checks were his idea. He did a second one. Didn't he do two? I think he did two. Okay. The rent moratorium. The extended unemployment benefits. All of those outside of the quantitative easing and the cash payments to the big corporations. Okay. Even a bigger problem is injecting money directly into the real economy like that, while simultaneously allowing the economy to shut down, doing travel restrictions, disrupting trade. So Trump is as much to blame for the inflation as anyone. And that's why, what's going to happen is people are going to say, well, this is all Biden's fault. And then we're going to get Republicans in. And the Republicans are not going to take care of the root cause of this issue, which is ultimately the Federal Reserve, the fact that we need to go back to a gold standard. But see, government can never willingly do that. Government will never willingly and voluntarily limit the amount of money they can spend, because the more money they can spend, the more power they have. And government will there's never been a government ever in history that has of its own volition limited its power. It's never happened. Tell me a time when it happened, if anybody knows. I doubt it. I doubt you can tell me one time where an established administration and the politicians that benefit from that administration of their own volition said, hey, you know what? I think we should decrease the amount of power and money and influence we have. Not going to happen. The system has to crash and burn, which it will. So that's my first thing for today. This is inflation. I've been talking about inflation. I made a successful prediction some time ago, about 3 or 4 months ago, calling for lower growth, higher inflation. We had one of the highest month over month inflation reads of the year so far last month, and we're getting our next one coming here next week, I believe, maybe early the week after, and it's not going to be good. And all government is going to do is try and put band-aids over the issue, and it's going to get worse. But that's what happens if the American people are going to be this stupid, then I hate to say it, they deserve what they're going to get, and it's going to get bad. But you have people like this who are politically influential. They have no fucking idea what they're talking about. So, I mean, here you go. He says more proof that the culprit is the supply chain and not big government spending. It's both. And then he says bring back U.S. manufacturing. Okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to put a gun to their head? First of all, are you going to travel to deploy the military or throughout the world to put a gun to their head wherever they are and tell them you're coming back to the United States? They're not going to come back if they're going to get taxed and regulated to oblivion. A company that brings its manufacturing back, which I said right here, a company that brings its manufacturing back here despite the high taxes and regulations will not be in business for long. It will get destroyed by its competitors. The only way to bring manufacturing back is to lower taxes, lower regulations, make this an environment where manufacturing can thrive, if that's what you want. But it's not going to happen. You can't just magically snap your fingers. These people have no idea how economics works whatsoever. And this is most of America. And that's why we're fucked. So, where are we at? Moving on. Maybe I make this a short one and stop it now. We're already at 22 minutes. I don't want to make this like a 30-minute video. I was going to talk about the Russia thing, but I can do that later. I just saw this tweet, and it just incensed me. It just, I've been saying this a lot. The reason things are falling apart is because the population is generally ignorant, like I said, of how their government works. So politicians can make unreasonable demands. Unreasonable promises that are impossible to keep, and people believe them. What did Biden say last year? Think of all the things he said last year. Just think of all of them, and then go to how. And the same thing with Trump. Oh, I'm going to build a wall, big beautiful wall, all that bullshit. No, President, you don't have the power. He tried. I'll tell you, he tried. In the end, he wasn't successful because the President of the United States does not have the power to unilaterally build a wall from sea to shining sea, and it wouldn't have worked anyway. You think you're going to keep the Mexicans from bringing drugs into the... First of all, you have to stop the weapons going down into Mexico in order to stop the drugs coming into the United States, but that's something no one wants to talk about. So... people don't know how their own government works, so politicians can say whatever they want, and then they have no idea. Americans have no concept of money whatsoever, no concept of economics. You start talking to the average person about inflation, they're just going to give you a blank stare. They're going to see a little fucking spittle drool coming out of the corner of their mouth. Okay. No, I'm going to have to be real. I mean... I've kind of like made a point of being harsh on this channel, and you need to be harsh with people sometimes. Look, I've been to fucking war. I've had a harsh fucking life, and most Americans are spoiled, pathetic idiots, and that's why we're in trouble. Because you start talking to them about inflation, they don't get it. And how many people in this country do you think they think the government can fix this inflation problem? I would say the majority of people in this country believe that the government can somehow fix the inflation problem. Well, they're going to find out real soon that they can't. First of all, the government is causing the inflation problem by keeping production low, printing money in order to keep, so the politicians can keep their job. Just put money in people's pockets so I can be a representative for 2 more years. Forget about the future. These guys, and they're straight robbing. They're straight pillaging this country, and most Americans are too stupid to get it. And finally, Americans have no fucking clue about history. Not a fan of Biden, okay? I think I've made that perfectly clear. But he's just a figurehead. But anybody who understood history and values history, well, Biden has 50 years of history that we could look to see how he's going to behave in the White House. And everybody just ignored it. I mean, he was an overt racist. But everybody just ignores it. It's the media. The media has dumbed down the population to the point where they're a bunch of slobbering idiots. I was going to talk about Russia, but we'll save that for another day because we have some things heating up with Russia, but I need to organize that a little bit better, and I'm already at a half an hour anyway. This is where we're at. We're at where people like this have influence over the conversation. And his girlfriend, Crystal Ball, too. Another completely insipid. When it comes to economics, people like him, Crystal Ball, completely vacuous and insipid. They have no fucking clue what they're talking about. Absolute insanity. This is where we're at. I said over a year ago, that this is going to be a persistent problem, mostly because I listen to Peter Schiff. These aren't all my ideas. Peter Schiff got me clued into what's going on. The inflation was destined to happen anyway. I think that the government policies due to COVID just accelerated the process that we were going to eventually feel anyway. So maybe that's a good thing. Okay. But fucking Kyle Kulinsky. It's like 50 to 75% of his takes on any issues are fucking retarded takes. He's putting people in Washington, D.C. I say that's great. Because the more idiots we get in Washington, D.C., the faster that house of cards crashes and burns. So I say, you know what? I take everything I said back. Well, I don't take back the fact that he's an idiot. I will say, I think it's fine. Let him put more people in Washington, D.C. Let him influence the conversation more, because one way or the other, the gravy train's ending, and if we can get more shitty ideas in Washington, it'll end quicker, and we can start the process of actually building a viable, decentralized country. Okay, so I think I'm done. We're at 28 minutes. Sounds good. I'm out.